Welcome back, and hopefully a interesting and lively discussion around this issue of risk. And it ties to a number of the discussions we've had around understanding your stakeholders, and as a best practice, once you understand who the material stakeholders are, how do you build up trust with them? And certainly one thing we've learned is once you break that trust, it's very hard to rebuild it. So I think in a way, what we're working through currently is just a general mistrust of business, unfortunately, with the meltdown on the credit crisis and a shift to government. So there is this issue of rebuilding trust, which will take effort. But whether it actually ebbs and flows will be an interesting question, because I think to maintain the trust, the standards keep rising higher. So you're going to have to keep working on it. But there we are on the subject of risk. Let's now take a look at that retail sector. We're clearly looking at supply chain issues, stakeholders, consumer active to the internet and social media is quite a challenge. So Wendy, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Don. Well, I'm going to talk about the social license in the retail sector, really focusing on three areas. The retail imperative, so what are the roles and responsibilities of retail? The kind of broad range of stakeholders that are in retail, the impact on brand, which of course is so important to the retail sector, risk and opportunity, and response, quick response and taking a leadership role in same. And then a few elements of board role and oversight, dealing with strategic alignment. Is there an ROI in social license, and also the issue of making it measurable from the standpoint of boards. So dealing with the specific roles of retail, in addressing the sector, there really are some differentiating roles that it has that make it stand out from other sectors. One, retail is a purveyor of culture. Probably more so than any other sector, and it also has a role as a gatekeeper between the supply base and consumers for the exchange of goods. And those two roles really are a very broad responsibility for retail boards and management. And in addition, retail has a really broad range of stakeholders. I mean, all the way from the supply side, which could be hundreds or even thousands of suppliers, through to the members of the supply chain, to employees of the organization, to communities, be it brick and mortar or be it in the social media realm. And then, of course, consumers could number in the thousands or millions, and could either be local or international through e-commerce. So there's a lot of moving parts within this retail sector, and breadth to manage that risk and gain social license. Board and management really need to ensure that the organization's values are consistent and that they're aligned along from supplier to retailer, all the way along that distribution channel. It's these values and that alignment of same that is critical in the development of brand. And brand being very important for retailers. Some live and die by brand. It sets up a number of expectations, a trust that consumers will have in that brand, and also commitments on the part of members of the supply chain and consumers. So the challenge is to build it and to protect it. And there are some potentially large downside risks of damage to the reputation and to the brand. And that could be through, of course, a lack of oversight of board and management. One of these examples is that of Loblaws and Joe Fresh, which in April 2013 had a supplier in the Rana Plaza in Bangladesh, and the building collapsed, killing 1,100 people, which is a terrible disaster. The retailer, Loblaws, felt that they had the requisite sign-off from the supplier dealing with the issues of labor and different standards, but clearly it did not have business, or at least building standards, building safety standards, and it was not audited. And I would certainly say that I think the majority of retailers do not have enough coverage in this area, that most would use a standard supplier agreement and that wouldn't cover them off for something like this. So it's particularly important now that suppliers there's a lot of third party, a lot of subcontracting, and so it's a wide range of responsibility. So faced with a crisis like this, it's incumbent upon board and management to act quickly and take a leadership role. And that is what Loblaws did. They were the first amongst 30 brands who that were being manufactured in Rana Plaza. They were the first to come forward and accept responsibility and say that they would pay compensation to the families of the victims. And they also were amongst the first to sign that 5-year agreement on the Accord of Fire and Building Safety. Loblaws is not alone. There's a number of other organizations such as IKEA, Body Shop, who have had these issues. So it's really key to make sure that all of those I's have been dotted and the T's crossed. I'm going to talk a bit about board role and oversight. And it's incumbent upon the board to deal with the strategic alignment and the prioritization of interests and community stakeholders. So the role is multifaceted. Board of management must jointly agree on the core company values. And as I say, the strategic alignment, the prioritization of the issues within the community, and it's identifying those key issues that most impact that business. It's going to be different for different retailers selling different commodities in different markets. An example of a board's role might be that of Walmart, which in 2004, the board tasked management with looking at the many outstanding legal issues that they had, along with public relations challenges. And of course, you can imagine a company, the largest retailer in the world, is a big target for issues of this type. So they conferred with many stakeholders, they did a lot of research, and they came up with a strategy of developing a very robust environmental sustainability program and driving that through the whole organization, from supplier all the way up to consumer. So they could earn social license, they were doing the right thing, they could drive down costs and actually improve the bottom line. It was a brilliant plan. The board was involved throughout this. Their CEO, Mike Duke at the time, and 3 of the board members from the US parent company, plus one of the Mexican board members, toured some of the other international markets. They came to Toronto, happened to be one of the people that they met with. And so they met with a range of people in the different countries, and it allowed them to get feedback, information about the communities, what are the hot buttons, and they then developed a very tailored program within each of the international divisions. This has actually dramatically improved the reputation. They've taken a leadership role in an area in which they were previously very weak, and I think that's really key. So another area I want to talk about is shareholder value and social license. Is there an ROI? Well, the answer is there can be, not always, of course, but in a number of cases, such as Alliance Boots, which is an international drug chain, and Home Depot, which you all know, as well as Walmart. All of them have embarked on a environmental sustainability programs as a cornerstone of their social license program. And in fact, they can show a very positive ROI at the end of the day. I think I mentioned earlier that 92% of the footprint of a retailer comes from the goods that they sell. And so in the case of Walmart and many other companies, looking back over that supply chain and saying, okay, how can you deal more effectively with water resources, less packaging, less weight? How do you become more efficient environmentally? It reduces risk and it increases profits at the end of the day. The third area I'd like to deal with in terms of the board's role and but to how do they do this? How do they make it measurable? And it has to be tangible actions and goals. So there's a number of ways that they can do that. Obviously, we've talked about having a robust risk framework. I would only add that the risks should be quantified and ranked, and of course, responsibility assigned. Another example is at the Northwest Company, where I'm on the board. I just want to say that the Northwest Company is not a mining company; it's a retail company. We have 230 stores in the North and also in the South Pacific and the Caribbean, many in remote locations and many in First Nations communities in the North. So we have identified community relations as a priority and have done several things to address that. One is that we've formed an external advisory board made up of key members of communities across the North. And they are there to have a conversation, to provide us with information and feedback on our kind of report card in the community and how we can do better. They should be a thorn in our sides, spurring us on to action. And so we're in the early stages of this, but it will allow us to more closely align our interests with those of the community, to understand them better. A number of boards, I think Alan spoke earlier about creating a corporate social responsibility committee. We see this to some extent in retail, although it's not really broad. An example might be Alliance Boots. Again, they had a CSR committee that reported quarterly to the board with a very specific set of dashboard of very specific objectives. Another way of dealing with this is through compensation. At Northwest, we have integrated community relations into the compensation structure. So we have identified it's a number of meetings with each community, who's going to be involved, from what level of management, et cetera. And those are, if those goals are not met or exceeded, then the incentives are not paid out, and vice versa. So it certainly cascades down in the organization. Money talks, and people get the idea that we mean business. There's also board involvement through investment decisions, and those may take the form of CapEx or financial decisions, but CapEx. So if, as a board, you have decided that community relations, for example, is your priority, then you're prepared to invest money for projects within those markets. And so board and management obviously aligned there. And financial decisions, if a retailer, for example, may decide that they want to drive prices down in a community in order to serve the community better, then of course the board is certainly very involved there. It's a major commitment. So use of NGOs is another way that boards can deal with social license in the community. In the case of CASO, Canadian Executive Services Organization, which I'm also on the board, they deal as partners with businesses in the mining sector and the retail sector to mitigate issues. Okay. So those are some of the issues, and back to you, Don.
So a number of things struck me there. Certainly